And we're coming at you in a time when fascism is not merely looming on the horizon. It's not creeping towards us. It's not even galloping towards us. We are living under fascism now, and it is rapidly consolidating. Donald Trump is making a mockery of due process. He is trashing the rule of law. Brown people with and without papers are being disappeared off the streets. Universities taken over, law firms strong-armed into becoming appendages of Trump's fascist lawlessness, which they should stop going along with. All of this and more, science, medicine being perverted, being erased to the cost of millions of lives. All of this and more is accelerating by the day. And this week, we're greeted by Donald Trump taking over Washington, D.C., sending in the National Guard, sending in FBI, federalizing and taking over the D.C. police.
Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged out maniacs and homeless people. And we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it. We have other cities also that are bad, very bad. You look at Chicago, how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is. We have other cities that are very bad. New York has a problem. And then you have, of course, Baltimore and Oakland. Caravans of mass youth rampage through city streets at all times of the day. They fight back until you knock the hell out of them, because it's the only language they understand.
As an initial response, we want to play a video from Coco Das, a leader of RefuseFascism.org, that she released just hours after this fascist press conference.
Trump just held a press conference straight out of Nazi Germany and the Confederacy, saying he's going to liberate D.C. from caravans of mass youth. Who do you think he means when he says mass youth? This is a plan to eliminate Black people and poor people from the Capitol and crush Democratic Party strongholds through brute fascist military force. He has already deployed the National Guard to D.C., and he also said, we're getting rid of the slums. He said, people fight back until you knock the hell out of them. He said that D.C. is full of violent gangs and criminals and that this is a tragic emergency. Let's be very clear. The biggest violent gang and criminal in D.C. is the Trump fascist regime that will not stop until everyone they hate is disappeared or subservient. And the real tragic emergency is that there is a genocidal fascist lunatic in the White House amassing more dictatorial power by the day. This has direction and momentum toward a total lockdown on dissent and democratic rights, with greater horrors to come if we do not act to stop it. Now is the time to take to the streets in growing numbers, non-violently, but with determination, refusing to accept this and demanding the removal of the illegitimate Trump fascist regime. No military occupation, no fascist takeover of D.C. Trump must go now.
Coco nailed that. This was a Nazi press conference. We want to show one of the videos from the next day after Trump unleashed his fascist federal forces throughout D.C. What you just watched was a homeless man surrounded by Trump's now deputized pigs. The man had a spit bag on his head, and they are rounding up homeless people throughout D.C. And Trump has said they're going to be taken away to undisclosed locations for their benefit. But people should know the history. When the Nazis came into power in Germany, they rounded up homeless people and put black triangles on them and was part of the cleansing of society, of the dirty forces. This has to be taken extremely seriously.
And here's Jeanine Pirro, that fascist judge from Fox News who Donald Trump just appointed as U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia.
The laws are weak. I can't touch you if you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. We need to go after the D.C. Council and their absurd laws. We need to get rid of this concept of, a no cash bail.
There she is ranting that there are some laws on the books that keep her from locking up, imprisoning, and stealing the lives of children. Young people, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds. And not only that, she says she wants to go after the D.C. City Council. No, well, she doesn't say she wants to just change the laws, which would be bad enough. She wants to go after the council itself. And she wants to do away with no cash bail. This is a reform that was hard fought in a handful of cities across the country to say that if you're poor and you're accused of a crime, you shouldn't be held in prison, in jail for no reason, just because you can't afford bail. And she wants to get rid of this small reform and keep people locked up. This harkens back not only to what's gone on with mass incarceration, which has ground up generation after generation of Black people's lives, Black men in particular, but it harkens back to the days after Reconstruction was reversed, when Black people would be picked up, ticketed, and imprisoned for being truant, for not having a job, for not having their papers. And they would be held month after month, year after year, as the fines built and they couldn't pay them to get set free. They are dragging this country back to the Confederacy.
And in line with that, we're going to show a clip from these federal forces going through Black neighborhoods in D.C., asking people sitting on their own porches for their ID for being Black out in public.
I'll stay in that trouble. You got your ID on you, Chip?
Well, no, I live right here.
Okay, cool.
It's a cigarette.
This has to come through to people. There is no living with this fascism. Think about this. Federal military troops running through the streets of American cities. Everything you laid out already, this has to be stopped now through mass sustained nonviolent protest and uprising aimed at driving this regime from power. And with that in mind, it's very important that in response to Trump's press conference, there have already been protests from refusefascism.org, from other organizations, local organizations like Free DC. Let's watch a couple clips of that. So this was a very good beginning, but this has to grow quickly, with millions making their number one priority in their lives right now, driving this regime from power. This Saturday, Refuse Fascism has called for protests across the country and in D.C. If you're on the East Coast, get to D.C. And wherever you are, get in the streets to demand no fascist takeover of D.C., no military occupation of our cities, hands off our youth, no Nazi cleansing of the homeless. Trump must go now.
And one thing that's very important to understand, and that we have to drive home to people, is no matter how it comes to power, fascism is always illegitimate. It's illegitimate because of the content and the horror that it is wreaking on people. And we're seeing that already, and there is worse to come if it's not stopped. But it's also important to understand that even on the terms of this system, it is illegitimate what Trump is doing as he shreds the Constitution and violates the rule of law and militarily takes over city after city, which is his threat. Anybody who's watched the Revolution Nothing Less show knows, and if you're watching for the first time, you're learning, we are fighting for a revolution. We know and we recognize that the U.S. Constitution is an exploiter's vision of freedom. It's the outlines and framework for an oppressive system. And we're fighting to get beyond that through a revolution. And in a little bit, you'll hear from Bob Avakian, where I asked him in an interview earlier this year about the society that a revolution will bring about, that he's written about, and he's written the framework for in the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America that he authored. But we also make the point, we RevComs, revolutionary communists, in this proclamation, we need and we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system, which brings alive what we're fighting for. We make the point that as long as we are forced to live under this system, we are going to defend the rights that are supposed to be guaranteed in the U.S. Constitution. And to bring alive just how extreme and lawless and fascist what Trump is doing here, we want to share a few clips from an important press conference held yesterday by Larry Krasner. Now, he is a district attorney of Philadelphia. He is a believer in the U.S. Constitution and this system, but even he is calling out the utter unconstitutionality and lawlessness of what Trump is doing, and we need to understand this. So let's watch.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here on a beautiful day in a beautiful city where the only emergency I can think of for public safety is what we call DJT. Donald J. Trump is the emergency right now in big cities in America. I just never really thought that the preservation of the government of the United States would be an issue that I would have to face. I just never thought that military invasion of America's big cities with a fear-based racist agenda in order to pave a path for a military takeover is something that I would face. And I deeply wish I didn't face it, but we all face it. This is a city that right now, much like Washington, D.C. and other major American cities, is enjoying historic lows in crime. And if you hear a 34-time felon, convicted felon, a 34-time convicted felon, talking about lawlessness, well, he ought to know he's good at it. When you hear him talking about insurrection, the only insurrectionist I know is DJT. He's it. He and his band of buddies that he let out of jail.
And from that same press conference, this is a clip of Peter Andrews, who's now part of the district attorney's office in Philadelphia, but he'd previously been part of the team that prosecuted the insurrectionists, the fascist coup makers from January 6th. And here he just shreds the logic that Trump is doing this for law and order.
I wanted to share some thoughts about the legality of the president sending military troops into the cities of Philadelphia. And the short answer is that there is no basis for him to do so. So you may have heard about the Insurrection Act. The conditions required to trigger the Insurrection Act in Philadelphia or any other major city are not met. It is not impracticable to enforce the laws of the United States. There is no insurrection on the streets. There is no evidence that the president cannot execute the laws of the United States. And it would be unconstitutional for the president to take certain steps like inviting out-of-state National Guard troops into Philadelphia unfederalized and without the governor's consent. January 6th was a dark day in American history. A violent mob attempted to overthrow the peaceful transfer of power. They succeeded in disrupting it. They caused a tremendous amount of property damage, and they injured, assaulted, attacked hundreds of law enforcement officers. The fact that the president would, on the one hand, pardon those defendants and then turn around and say, as he has said this week, that committing an offense against a law enforcement officer will be met with the strongest possible response, it's not just hypocritical. It reveals that the president does not understand the rule of law. He believes that there's one rule if you support him, and one rule if you do not.
So look, we're playing some of these clips from this press conference to drive home the utter illegitimacy, the lawlessness of what Trump is doing. And it's important when anybody, including a Democratic Party official or somebody in one of the ruling institutions, takes a stand against what the Trump fascist regime is doing. And we need to bolster that and make it a part of the fight to drive this fascist regime from power. At the same time, it's really important, it's imperative that we understand a point that Bob Avakian has stressed repeatedly, that while individual Democratic Party members or other members of the ruling class of this society may take important stands and play a part in standing up against what Trump fascism is and what they're doing, as an institution, the Democratic Party cannot be relied on to fight this fascism and defeat it the way it needs to be fought. And the fundamental reason for this is that the Democratic Party is an institution of and serves this system of capitalism imperialism. As an institution, this party, the Democratic Party, is loyal to this system. And its biggest priority is the smooth functioning of this system. And it will prioritize that, even if it means conciliating, accommodating, and collaborating with fascism, which it's been doing again and again. It'll prioritize that smooth stability above the kind of upheaval and all-out fight it will take to defeat this fascism. So again, while we are happy when people stand up to it from within the ruling structures, we have to recognize that the fight to defeat this fascism is going to take a struggle from below. It's going to take the millions of decent people who've been in the streets coming back out, and millions more, but with unrelenting ceaseless determination to drive this regime from power. Nonviolent, but pitched struggle that does not stop until the regime is unseated.
Yeah, and I'll just add, one of our responsibilities in that, though, is that we actually also have to defend these Democratic Party politicians when they come under attack, because that's part of how fascism consolidates, is they crush their opposition within these ruling structures. Right. And as part of what you're describing, Sansara, people have to change their plans right now. Cancel your trip. Take the time off of work that you have to take. We do not have that much time. And yet there is still time if we seize it, if we act commensurate. So everyone, everywhere, this is your responsibility to defeat this fascism, to drive this fascist regime from power, uniting all who can be united. And here we want to play a clip from Carl Dix, a revolutionary and a follower of Bob Avakian, who puts a particular challenge coming off this fascist press conference to Black people.
To all the Black people who say that dealing with Donald Trump ain't our fight, who the hell do you think he was talking about when he said this?
They fight back until you knock the hell out of them.
Exit the vehicle now! Exit the vehicle!
Until you knock the hell out of them. 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 Knock the hell out of them.
Donald Trump is a genocidal racist. Open your eyes and look at what's really going down. It's time, and way past time, for Black people to join with others on the front lines of the fight to drive the Trump MAGA regime from power. I'm Carl Dix, and I urge everybody with a conscience and a heart for the people to join with me in taking up Refuse Fascism's call to drive the fascist regime from power. And I also call on you to get down with the RevComs and Bob Avakian, to organize for a real revolution, to get rid of this capitalist imperialist system and all the horrors that it brings down on people, and bring a whole better way for people to live into being.